Hey guys, it's Christine, also known as IvyWinter. Thank you for joining me for another unpopular Disney opinion. And whoa, is this an opinion?
It's gonna be a big one. I think.
Gonna be I think everyone knows it's a big one because you're here. And you haven't done an unpopular. The last unpopular Disney opinion you did with me was the one about the holidays going on for too long when we were.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
I don't remember. Did people disagree with that? Were people like all about the holidays lasting forever?
it was a little bit mixed, but today's topic is very timely. And it's something
Only timely.
Yeah, something that you and I have talked about in the TTA before. So it's not like our opinions are necessarily new, or like people don't. Well, I guess if you don't listen to TTA, then you don't know them.
Right, or don't follow us on Twitter.
Yeah, where I've been quite vocal about this. But given that Disneyland has pushed out their opening indefinitely, I think we're both agreed in our opinion that Disney World needs to do the same.
Yes.
And that is what we're going to be talking about today. And I don't know, it's funny because I say unpopular. I'm not really sure where it stands, because I do know that there are people who have agreed with me, but I do know that there's a lot of people who are very adamant and pushing, chomping at the bit to get to the parks.
Yeah. Well, it depends on the audience you're talking about, because I think in the community, the theme park, fan community, it's a bit mixed. But I think outside of the community, it's almost universally like, why are you doing this? Why are you opening theme parks right now? This is the worst time to open. I mean, just before we recorded, Stephen King was making fun of the idea of the theme parks opening on Twitter. I haven't seen anyone support it outside of the community.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. And so I don't even know in terms of my community here. I think it'll be really interesting to see what you guys think, because I'm not really sure where a lot of people totally stand. But from what I've seen, yeah, you and I are inundated in the community on Instagram, on Twitter. I do creep on some Facebook groups that I don't always recommend it because those are the really opinionated people. And there's definitely people who feel like, they've booked their vacations. They've had the right to go, whether July, August, whatever. And I think that if Disney pushed back the opening, there would be some uproar with a specific group of people. But I feel like personally, and this is coming from two people who, our channels are based on this, our podcast is based on this. We love Disney. I don't think that
my job is Disney at this point.
Basically,
not with Disney, but I write about theme parks every week.
Yeah, and I talk about planning to go to Disney World. So, when I say that I feel like Disney World should shut down, or stay shut down, I really mean it, because I feel like I'm coming from and we talked about this before, but being in the Northeast, I saw what we went through, and I think a lot of people thought, oh, it's up there. They're having it worse, and as if we all live in little islands. Every state is just its own whatever. And it's not going to affect us here. And I mean, we were just talking today, even the numbers, it's funny because in Jersey, I was I remember when we were in it, I felt we were having a lot of cases per day. And I was whoa, this is intense. And then so today, today as of recording this, Florida set another new record. And I thought...
We try, Christine. We're doing our best.
I know. And Peter was like, oh, did we ever, reach that many in a day? And I guess just being inundated in the back in April, I was like, yeah, probably. And then I looked it up, and, I think 4,300 was the highest one-day cases we had here in Florida, is over 9,000. Oh, wow, that just went right into meme territory. We made really extreme moves here at that point, and I think, like I said, as someone who's not there, and you are, it's so crazy to see, from my perspective, this very slow reaction to it. Now it almost seems like it's kind of we'll kind of sort of do some stuff, but we're not really going all in on it, which to me is nuts, because it doesn't help. It doesn't. You either got it,
you can't talk about this subject without it getting political. So I don't know, warning, there's going to be some politics involved in this.
Which can I also say though that I feel like, much like a lot of other issues going on in the world right now or in this country, it's not political. Like
I'm not talking about like wearing a mask like it shouldn't be a political stance.
But that's what I want to say ahead of time. Like it becomes political only because I think a lot of other people have made it right. So, you know.
And in this case, it is to the level of state government. And that's what I kind of wanted to touch upon, which is that I think a big reason you're not seeing the train slow down when it comes to this Disney World reopening is because Florida's not going to do anything to stop it. Because Florida's stance is, well, we're going to reopen and rip this Band-Aid off. And, you know, it just, you know, I mean, you can't avoid the elephant in the room. It's our governor is a big fan of Trump, and the federal government right now is not really taking a lot of serious steps to try and combat it. So on those two important levels above Disney, you're not seeing any movement to close it. So it really is a decision that lies in Disney's hands at this point. And so it's tough because Disney, for as much as we love to think of them as this caring and kind and, you know, this all-American, you know, company by Uncle Walt, it is a publicly traded corporation that just had a terrible, you know, quarterly earnings call that is going to have an even worse quarterly earnings call in the next one and probably the few after that. And so personally, as much as I hope they don't reopen or they push it back, I think those fears of their revenues is not gonna slow them down.
I think also, and one of the arguments, which I think, you know, it's a totally fair argument, is, you know, what about the employees? Like me saying, like, I understand the repercussions of me saying I think they should push out opening. I have friends who are, you know what I mean? Like, I understand the repercussions for people who I am very close with. So I don't necessarily say it lightly or without thinking about, like, this means that they don't have a paycheck or, you know, like, it is a tough situation, but me, just morally, I will always put people's lives above that. But you and I also had a discussion of a lot of that has to do with, you know, fixing unemployment in Florida, fixing other aspects that could then carry those employees through. At least it might not be an ideal situation.
That's where it gets political again, right? It's I think if anybody who's followed the story, the unemployment situation in Florida was a giant mess. And to be fair, I don't think any state's unemployment system was prepared for the levels that we hit during this pandemic. But rather than fixing it, it seemed to be like, let's hold it up for a few months and now reopen. And as long as we reopen, we don't have to worry about it being able to handle it. And you go on that larger level and, you know, the federal relief, we all got that stimulus check. And there are a lot of people who argue that that one check, while, you know, it certainly helped at the time, considering the length of this whole pandemic, isn't enough. And so these are, again, these are reasons why Disney can now point to their reopening and go, well, we have to, because these cast members need a paycheck, and they do need a paycheck. I think the solution is we should be putting pressure on the state and federal government so that people aren't forced to put themselves at risk right now to get that paycheck.
Pay bills. I agree.
I realize that is also a much steeper hill to try and climb up than trying to get Disney to, you know, not open their doors.
I guess the other question that always comes to mind is, like, it's interesting that Disneyland is pushing back. And I know some people say, well, they never officially got approval from the state, and that's part of the reason why. But at the same time, looking at what's happening in California, looking at what's happening in Florida, now both states are having a rise in cases. But I feel like you can't say to me, you know, California is not safe enough to open, but Florida is. You know, like, can Disney also reasonably have one coast closed and the other one open? Will they do that? Like that?
I mean, they did it with Disney. I mean, it was a matter of days, but they did it when they closed at first. And I think what they would argue back is it's not that they're not opening because it's not safe, because their official statement was they're not getting the guidelines on reopening until after the 4th of July.
Right.
And that doesn't give them enough time to properly prepare. So they'd argue, oh, we're being safe by giving ourselves that extra time. Whereas, Orange County in Florida rubber stamped the approval for Disney World weeks and weeks back, month or so back. Yeah. And so they've had that time. So that's why I'm like, I've seen people over these last few days go, look, these numbers are getting crazy. There's no way Disney's going to reopen. They're going to have to push it back. And unfortunately, I think they're not going to push it back. I think they're set in this, and there's nothing that's going to come in and stop them. They're like, I don't know what it could be that would prompt them to, because like they just spent the last week doing all of the reservations for parks.
True. And in a very complicated system.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, I do think that there would be an uproar of people who said, like, I spent all this time and all these hours booking my trip. Now you're going to tell me again I can't go. But then, also look at the cruise line, though. That wasn't their decision. So I was just telling you earlier that the cruise that we canceled ourselves ended up being canceled. I think it was like the whatever the cruise association is. It's like above every other, above all of the cruise lines mandated that they were going to close through September. So it wasn't a Disney decision.
You got the hoops of, they dock in other countries.
Correct.
And, so getting on to, it's not like we'd be able to walk off onto Nassau anyway. So
also, Universal's open. So Disney can point to them and be like, well, they're open, so we can still move forward. It's not like Universal's suddenly backtracking. I think if other theme parks did, I think if other theme parks did, maybe Disney would. But I think that almost gives them a reason.
You'd think they picked such a later date to reopen, and I think the general assumption when they did was, oh, they're playing it smart so that they can
see what happens,
and then hope that they have to.
Yeah.
And maybe that was their plan, but maybe it just, this spike happened too late and they were like, sorry, the ball's already rolling, we have to go with it. But I'm gonna throw a surprise, unpopular, Inception opinion.
Okay.
And that is, I can already tell, we've heard so many of the arguments on both sides of this, and I think one of the big arguments is, we have to reopen at some point or another. We can't stay in lockdown forever, and we need to learn how to cope with this in a smart way. And if you look at the rising cases in Florida specifically, and you lay out the dates of when everything happened, when they reopened restaurants, there was no spike. When they did Memorial Day, there wasn't really a spike. Even with all the protests going on, 2 weeks later, there was a slight rise, but no spike.
Not what they thought, yeah.
When they opened the bars at 50% capacity, 2 weeks later, now we're seeing an explosion in cases. And we're hearing articles about how it's more younger people who are getting caught with it. And so I think what that might show is, one, wearing a mask works, and all of these social distancing things work, and they do help. And that might even lend itself to an argument of, there should be a pathway to reopen things like theme parks. And if these parks can properly enforce this, which is a whole other argument, I don't think Disney can, but I think that's a fault of Disney and them always trying to please everybody. That you won't see a massive spike from the theme parks in this bubble.
Yeah.
All that, we are in the middle of a giant spike right now. And it's not in a bubble. And so you're going to have more people going there who are inevitably going to be infected, and they're going to spread it to
and
other
don't
people.
know it. And
And so whenever I hear the argument of, well, then when are we going to reopen? All I can think of is not right now. Not during this spike. Maybe we go back. That's the thing. This has made me realize that I wasn't this harsh about Disney reopening a month ago, because I did see that cases weren't exploding.
Right.
I thought, all right, yes, we're testing the waters here, but you know what? The reality is now they are exploding.
Yeah.
And so I'm not saying Disney should stay closed until there's a vaccine or for a full year.
Yeah,
or anything.
I'm not saying that either.
But we got to get over this new spike that we're experiencing and let that level off, and then pound it into people's heads that you need to wear a mask and you need to practice social distancing. because look at all these other examples where people were doing it and then they were able to reopen. And then you have this one, bars, they're crowded, everyone's got their mask
and there's
off,
no, it's a suggestion to wear a mask. It's not,
and it's
unless a
specific.
Lot of
people just and then you see the explosion. And so I think if you can fix those things, if you can get past this hump, and then you could drive it into everybody's heads that they have to, or get Disney to just militantly enforce it.
That's what they're doing here, and we have gotten past our spike. You said there's younger people getting sick, who I do think, and I kind of saw it with my youngest brother-in-law not long ago, like they feel a little bit invincible.
Sure.
But the problem is,
this is a soapbox point that I don't see online enough that I really wish we saw more of, which is, I think this whole thing has been boiled down to this binary state of, are you gonna die from it or are you not gonna die?
And it shouldn't be.
You're statistically not gonna die, so it's no problem.
Thank you.
But here's the thing, it's still horrible.
You can still give it to your grandma who could die from it.
At best, it's going to be a miserable couple of weeks. At worst, you're going to have long-lasting effects. And you know what? There are people who ended up in the hospital who lose part of their lung capacity and haven't gotten it back, who survived, and they're part of that statistic of, oh yeah, I didn't die. And so, I think there needs to be, there still needs to be an effort on trying your best not to spread this thing around, regardless of what the mortality rate is. And on that other point, Disney World, it's not a bar, so I think Disney would have an easier time maintaining social distancing rules. But you also have to remember that all of the cast members at Disney live in Florida, and there's a world outside of Disney, and that cast member either A, might have been one of the people in the bars just a couple of weeks ago, or B, they just go food shopping and they run into somebody who was at a bar, and before you know it, now the virus is in the parks. And while you could do things like testing for employees, which would be great, that still doesn't change that. You do them, every week or every couple of days. That's still a window where they can show up with it, and that's all it takes. So, and that's why I think, I'm softer on the idea that Disney can take steps to reopen in this pandemic, but when you bring in the context that they are in a state that is right now living through this record-breaking spike, they should be reacting to that, and they shouldn't just, we love to think of Disney World as the Disney bubble because they've got so much land, but when it comes to something like this, they're not in a bubble. They are very much in Central Florida, and they have to kind of act like that. And so that's why, in my mind, what I would love to see ideally is not Disney closed for the rest of the year. I would love to see, we're going to push it back another couple of months until we can figure this out, and until we see that people are being responsible enough that we can start to reopen stuff without having these crazy spikes. I'm primarily thinking about the cast members, because a lot of people I've seen make the argument, well, if you're not comfortable, don't go. And that's great. I'm not going. And if you feel like you want to put yourself at risk to go to a theme park, I think that's kind of crazy, but you do you. But at the same time, these cast members are not in such a simple position where they can be like, well, I just am not going to go, because again, we go to those larger political reasons. They need a paycheck, and they're not getting the sort of safety net that the state
and could potentially lose their jobs. Like if Disney opens and says you gotta come to work, what are you gonna do? So
I've always found it hard this past month or so to walk the fine line of expressing that I don't want to go because of all the safety measures, but not because I'm against the safety measures. I just don't value theme parks enough to make it worth going through all that trouble.
I agree.
I'll put on the mask to go food shopping, and keep 6 feet apart to stay safe because I have to go food shopping, but I don't have to go to a theme park, and I'm not going to go through all this trouble and then wake up at the crack of dawn to reserve a park for a day, 6 weeks in the future. None of that just seems worth it to me. So I am personally just not chomping at the bit to get back.
Yeah.
But
I agree. I think it's twofold for me too. It's one, obviously pandemic, but also I don't know if it's worth it to me with those restrictions, without fireworks, and that's just a me thing. I don't, especially that I have to get on a plane and get down there. If I'm going to spend that money and spend that time, I want to have the full experience. I don't want to feel like I'm super limited in what I can do there. So there you have it. There's a part of me right now, I'm sitting here, I'm like, oh, this is going to be real interesting when we put this up. But you know what? I feel like it needs to be said. I feel like there's a weird, like we talk about the community. I'm all for talking Disney, and I want to keep talking Disney. And, you know, I think that's important. But I have been saying to myself, do I want to keep talking about planning right now when I don't feel personally like it's right? So I'm happy to do more discussion videos and things like that. But I worry that there are people in this community who are like completely glossing over what's happening. It's almost like they're just pretending it's not going on. So I felt it was important. I know you felt it was important to just like have this discussion because it's what's happening in the world right now. Like, I don't think that we can really ignore it. You know what I mean?
At the risk of alienating some people, maybe even some who are watching right now, somebody made a really good point, which is that this entire ordeal has really separated out who loves the parks and enjoys them and treats them as this hobby in a healthy way, and who needs the parks because they can't cope with reality. And I'm not saying everybody who's planning to go in the next couple of months is in that second category, but there are definitely people who, like, they hear news about Disneyland delaying their reopening, and they're immediately like, this is a tragedy. I just wanted to go to Disneyland. I needed to get back to Disneyland. And, you know, I think there's a small minority of the fandom, but there definitely are people out there who, you know, nothing else matters. I got to get to the parks. And that's where I want to, like, just pound, like, this idea of perspective. You know, they're theme parks. They'll be there next year.
I mean, I'm sad. I wanted to go. There were things I wanted to do. And, you know, and, like, do I miss it? Of course I miss it. But to your point, they will be there. You know, but I think we all just need to, like, protect ourselves and others right now. That's just, like, the more important thing. Yeah. Well, thank you for joining me, Rob.
No problem. Everybody stay safe. Wear a mask. If Pixel can wear her cone and not complain, we can wear a mask and not complain.
She has stayed up there this entire video, but she keeps switching. Just keeps. Yeah. She's trying. She's chilling. She just, like, I don't even see her arms. It just looks like she's laying, like.
She, like, tucks them in under herself.
Oh, the little turkey thing. That's what I say when Shmi does.
We call her a little bread loaf.
Thank you again for joining. Thank you to everyone watching. I want to open up the discussion and the conversation. Do you agree with us? Do you disagree with us? Keep it civil is all I ask in the comments below. But, I mean, everyone is entitled to their opinion. I often see some really thoughtful comments on videos like this, so I'm interested in what you guys have to say. So let us know in the comments below. If you like this video, then like it. If you like me, then you should subscribe. I make videos every single week. You should also check out Rob's channel, which now has a new name. Let's talk a little bit about it.
Rebranding. Channel's called Midway to Main Street, and every week and a half or so, I put out a video that explores the history of theme parks and amusement parks from across the country and around the world, going all the way back to the old World's Fairs of the turn of the century.
All I think of is how I used to live 10 minutes away from the park where the Queen's World's Fair was.
It's funny how that used to be the, like, de facto World's Fair in my mind when you say the words World's Fair.
Yeah.
And since I've expanded and done, like, all this extra reading, it's now Chicago in...
Oh, yeah. I mean, that was the one. But
the Ferris wheel and everything.
You know what? To us Queens people, let us have our one thing.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great rest of the day. Bye.
I bet the Mets are real upset at you that the World's Fair is Queen's one thing. Sorry,
Yankees fan, sorry.